Most people hear the word loneliness and automatically thinks of sadness, isolation, depression, and it is no coincidence. We live in a culture that worships socialization, which measures a person's value for the amount of connections, followers, likes. Being alone, it's almost a shame, a sign of social failure. But what if we are completely wrong about it? Aristotle said, to live alone, one must be an animal or a god. Already, Nietzsche responds with his philosophical sarcasm, you have to be both. And here begins the dilemma. Solitude has two sides, a dark side, which crushes, that hurts, that can sink us. But it also has a bright side, which raises, strengthens, and transforms. But what is the difference between the two? Simple. How you relate to silence. Nietzsche, Schopenhauer, Pascal, Camus, they all spent long periods alone, and they extracted their deepest thoughts. Solitude for them was not a lack of something, but the presence of oneself. This is exactly what differentiates the destructive loneliness from creative loneliness. The first is meaningless emptiness. The second is the encounter with the real one in you. The question then is not, how do I run away from loneliness? But yes, am I ready for what can I find inside me? Arthur Schopenhauer said, a man can only be himself while he is alone. If he does not love loneliness, he does not love freedom. And here is an essential point that most ignores. You are only truly free when you are alone. Because every relationship, even the best, carries expectations, social codes, behavioral adjustments. We live filtering what we say, measuring reactions, adapting the tone of the voice. We are constantly interpreting, but in solitude, there is no audience, there is no judgment, there is no requirement. You shout, whisper, cry, dance, write, break, build, as you want, whenever you want. Nietzsche said, society tries to steal our soul. That is why he sought the desert, the top of the mountain, the isolation, because it is there that we are the masters of ourselves again. Think, how many ideas have you stopped following for fear of criticism? How many wills have you swallowed to adapt? How many times have you hid behind a mask? Solitude offers you the opposite of this. It offers you autonomy, authenticity. This is where independent thinking is born. This is where you stop repeating and start creating. That is why so many geniuses are isolated, not for arrogance, but because creative freedom requires silence. And you? Would you hold the weight or lightness to be completely free? In solitude, you not only escape the world, you get in touch with him, your inner world. This is what philosopher Philip Koch called tuning with himself, a state where thoughts, memories, feelings, and desires flow without censorship, without performance, without additions. Have you ever noticed how even our thoughts change when we are with someone? The presence of the other shapes even what we feel, but alone. You listen to yourself for the first time, real. This is where memories that you found forgotten, ideas that were blocked, poorly resolved conflicts that return to light, shelved dreams that still call you. This dive can be beautiful, but also painful, because not everything that appears in silence is light. You can find anger, sadness, insecurities, guilt, but it also finds forces, talents, passions, clarity that were buried. It's like taking the dust off a mirror and seeing who you really are. And there is no way to grow without going through it. Solitude is the portal for a more honest, more entire, more powerful version of itself. Nietzsche knew that. Jung knew. Buddha, Christ, the Hermans, the warriors, they all knew. And you? Will you continue to be afraid of the mirror? Freedom. This is one of the most poorly interpreted words of modernity. Today we think of freedom, how to do whatever you want, travel wherever you want, talk what you want. But is that right? Arthur Schopenhauer said, a man can only be himself when he is alone. If he does not love loneliness, he does not love freedom. Because when we are with others, there are always demands. Answer like this. Behave that way. He used to smile. Be productive. Be cool. Fit. Even our mood depends on the environment. Have you noticed this? Being with someone in a bad mood pulls you down. A trial look closes you. The presence of strangers makes you observe yourself and prune. Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Hell is the others." Not because the other is bad, but because the presence of the other makes us objects, visas, measured, evaluated, judged. In solitude, this judgment disappears. There is no audience. There is no requirement. There is no approval to be won. Only you and your purest freedom, to think whatever you want, feel whatever you want, to be who you are, without apologizing. This is why the great philosophers, artists, and mystics sought isolation. They knew that there and only there they were free to hear what the world tries to silence. And maybe that's why loneliness scares you so much, because it shows you that true freedom has always been in your hands. But you escaped her. When was the last time you really heard your own mind? No distraction, without music, no cell phone, without another voice influencing you, only you, with you. This is where the true impact of loneliness lives. It forces you to tune in to your own conscience. Philosopher Philip Koch calls this free flow of mind, a state where your thoughts, emotions, memories, and desires emerge without censorship, no masks, without editing, shameless. And what happens when this flow opens? Buried things start to rise, forgotten memories, abandoned dreams, unused traumas, truths you hid even from yourself. And that can hurt. May Sarton, American writer, once said, "I start to feel that I am returning to a deep self who has been too wounded to work for a long time." And that, tuning with yourself, is the moment you take the armor. Face this inner voice, even if it screams. It is the first step to heal, because only those who have the courage to hear their own chaos are able to find real peace. And this peace doesn't come from outside. She is born in silence. She is born of loneliness. But let's be sincere. Not every silence is quiet. Not every loneliness is liberating. Sometimes loneliness hurts. When we move away from the noise of the world, we don't hear our inner wisdom, we also hear what we spend all our lives trying to drown out. Old fears, unresolved shame, suffocated anxieties, contained anger, hidden traumas at the bottom of the mind. It is at this moment that loneliness becomes mirror, and she doesn't lie. Philip Koch points out that this confrontation can be brutal. The absence of distractions brings out devastating emotions, which we have avoided for years. It is as if all the monsters of our minds decided to present themselves at once. But here is the crucial point. This suffering is necessary, because one can only heal what is willing to face. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can endure almost any like." That is, suffer with purpose, suffer in silence, facing himself, freeze. Japanese psychologist Shoma Morita developed a therapeutic method based on this. Leave the patient in full insulation, without distractions, so that he was forced to accept his pain until she dissolved by itself. Does it seem cruel, perhaps? But it works, because in the absence of noise, what remains is the confrontation. And in confrontation, there is the possibility of rebirth. Throughout history, great civilizations have always understood. Solitude is not punishment, it is preparation. In various cultures, spending time alone was a ritual of passage. A boy only became a man after facing the world, with no one around. In indigenous tribes, for example, young people were taken to remote areas and were isolated weeks, hunting, facing predators, dealing with their own fears. It was in this isolation that they learned to dominate the mind, to truly know yourself, trusting yourself. This journey was not physical, it was spiritual. And only those who won the very fear of loneliness was, in fact, a man, because he had proved to himself that he could depend on his inner strength. James Hollis sums up this. No matter how tribal our life is, we are all on the journey alone, and we need to learn to seek strength within us. Today, this ancestral wisdom seems forgotten, Our society despises loneliness. We transform silence into discomfort. We create screens, stimuli, and noise to escape alone anytime. But maybe that's exactly what weakens us, because in avoiding loneliness, we avoid our greatest master, ourselves. We live in an age where loneliness is treated as a threat, as if being alone was a symptom of personal failure. But at the same time, we ignore that running away from it can be even more dangerous. In the past, loneliness was associated with introspection, wisdom, and maturity. Today, it is seen as something to be avoided at any cost. Our culture has become dependent on constant distraction. We are always busy with something, looking at screens, consuming superficial content, filling the silence with noise, so as not to be forced to face ourselves. We can't stand the void because we are afraid of what we will find when it reveals itself, and the result of this escape is an inner collapse, increasing anxiety, a sense of chronic disconnection, and a life in which, even surrounded by people, the individual continues to feel deeply alone. We created an environment where being with yourself is strange, almost offensive. The very idea of sitting in silence without distractions became scary. Nietzsche said that those who can't be alone will never be truly free, because those who depend on the other to feel good is always at the mercy of external validation. Already, Blaise Pascal stated that all the problems of humanity come from the inability of a man to remain silent, alone in a room. The point is clear: by avoiding loneliness, we lost the chance of transformation. Solitude is not a punishment, it is an opportunity, a portal for self, knowledge, for growth, and often for true inner freedom. To run away from it is to run away from yourself, and nothing gets sick the human being than living disconnected from its own essence. Solitude doesn't have to be a burden. It can be the greatest gift you have ever received. But for that, it takes courage. Courage to hear, to face yourself, to transform. The great thinkers, artists, spiritual and revolutionary leaders of history understood this. The path to greatness almost always goes through a long and silent inner desert. Nietzsche, Schopenhauer, Camus, Jung. Everyone found in solitude not just a refuge, but a force. And maybe it's time for you to do the same. The question that remains is, can you be alone with yourself? Without fear, no distraction, no escape. If this video has moved you somehow, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And of course, leave your comment. Solitude strengthens you or scares you? I want to know how you deal with this silence. Like, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because here we always go deeper.